Cyberpunk 2077 was the most anticipated and yet most controversial game of late 2020 into early 2021. When I mention CD Projekt Red's latest installment, the thought of a poor release on an overpromised game brings a sense of disappointment for a franchise so well renowned for the unique creative writing and in-depth storytelling. For most, this experience was enough to overlook a game designed to immerse you in a world that balances itself between beauty and darkness and action and atmosphere. Cyberpunk is without a doubt an exceptional world to behold. During 2013's E3, CD Projekt Red first announced the development of Cyberpunk, showing players around the world a unique concept providing a new gameplay experience unlike anything seen in present-day titles. After this initial announcement, CD Projekt Red would go on to provide the community with very little in terms of any progress made with the development or any sense of a roadmap to hint to the players of advancements made with the progress of the game itself. With this little info provided, and with the launch of another game, The Witcher 3, in May of 2015, it began to feel as though Cyberpunk was but a thought, and nothing more had come of the game itself. If we fast forward to 2020, we are given the official release information regarding the ghost of a game many had placed in the back of their mind as a forgotten memory. Although CD Projekt Red has given the community a glimmer of hope with the slight progress seeming to be made with the game, and several showcasings of gameplay and story elements, this is where the game began to falter. As the year began to progress, CD Projekt Red began to make a promise of a game full of life and adventure, with in-depth interactions with the police as the city is riddled with crime. Promises of a unique story, depending on one of the 3 different life paths provided during the creation of your character, and in-depth interactions with the world around you to truly immerse you, the player, into the world that is Cyberpunk 2077. With everything the developers were showing, the game looked to be ready. Looked like it had the potential for limitless possibilities. Cyberpunk looked to be the best game of 2020. When Cyberpunk initially launched, I will admit I was amongst the many players who had the game installed and ready to go for when I returned from work. The excitement was felt everywhere for the next big title from CD Projekt Red, and I was quick to share that experience with those close to me. At the moment you launch the game, you can feel a dark synth style of music in the startup scene and on the main menu setting up the tone of the game to follow. This, however, is where the good seems to end. One of the first things that most players noticed when starting up their first character to dive into the world of Cyberpunk was the character customization, or should I say lack thereof. The character creator feels rough, almost incomplete when creating a person in a world of this caliber. A small selection of hairstyles, eye types, eye colors, and body modification settings leaves quite a bit to be desired when making a character in a world full of creative opportunities, unique world characters, and out-of-this-world body mods. To add to this, the 3 different life paths that you can choose from may help show the different perspectives of characters' lifestyles in the world. But as for how each path interacts with the game is very minimal at best. Apart from the roughly 5-minute intro into the world from the perspective your life path provides, the only other thing that occasionally pops up throughout your playthrough are small dialogue options every now and then that don't really provide much in terms of story. After you've created your character and once you're in the game, you learn that your character's name is V. In my opinion, this was a good choice on the part of the developer, as the character is voiced and it makes for a more neutral grounds for the player's character.
I'm V.
We've seen something like this before, with Mass Effect only using the main character's last name, allowing the player to truly make their character without ruining the narrative. Now, determined off which life path you chose is how you, the player, start your journey. But as stated before, this will only be about 5 minutes worth of background for the character before a brief cutscene. The cutscene, no matter your story, will play the same, and sadly, this is where we begin to see the instability of the game itself. With characters T-posing, and the game engine failing to load many aspects, as well as several rendering issues with some of the NPCs, turning most into what looks like half-baked potatoes. The engine that is used for this game seems to struggle around every corner, with bugs popping up from time to time, failed rendering of models, buildings, and textures, and that's just a small list of the issues. If you are curious about the issues that plague this game, feel free to look into the CD Projekt Red's patch notes for this game. Now, onto the game itself. Something unique about this game, in my opinion, is the first-person perspective it locks the player in. I feel going with this option was a great idea, as it provides the player with a more personal feel to the game and our interactions with the world. We, the player, created V, the main character, and playing through their life, through their eyes, makes everything more engaging. Although there is no third-person option in the game, locking the player into first person for the majority of it except when driving that of a vehicle, some players have expressed that the third-person option may have been better for the game. But I feel as though, from the narrative standpoint, when CD Projekt Red was making this game, it would have taken away from the experience. The reason I state this is because most of the third-person open-world games that I have played, or those with a third-person option, tend to lose the emotion they can build into the characters, as the main player is primarily stationary, void of emotion or any sense of personality. Most games that are third-person tend to rely on cutscenes to add that missing personality or emotion the developers wish to convey. But with Cyberpunk, everything is through the character's eyes. When the player makes a decision to interact with an NPC, there is no third-body experience with the dialogue. There is no cutscene. All hand gestures, all emotions, all actions are placed directly in your hands, and seeing every decision through your eyes. This is something I feel CD Projekt Red absolutely nailed with this game. Cyberpunk 2077's story can feel slow at some points, but regardless of this fact, I continue to find the story engaging and a true roller coaster ride on some missions. I never found that it was missing all too much. The player decides most of the actions that take place throughout the game, with some side missions being borderline fun and an absolute blast, to others that play with the heartstrings of the player. With the atmosphere of the world CD Projekt Red created, along with the story presented in this world, you can find yourself in moments of absolute immersion. Now, moving on to the gameplay aspect, the movement of the character as well as combat, for the most part, feels relatively smooth. Only having rare occasions, the combat feels slightly more rough than intended. As for the leveling system in this game, the best thing that I can closely describe it to would be that of Skyrim, with multiple categories to choose from range combat to melee combat, hacking, and stealth. There is something for every type of player on this list, and the more you use a specific type of action, the better you will get at executing said action. To put it plainly, the more you hack, the better at hacking you get. The more you rely on melee weapons, the more proficient you are with them. It's a pretty simple and straightforward concept that allows for players to truly play how they see fit. This game has a solid set of gameplay and a fantastic story to go along with it. This game, although riddled with bugs and engine issues, is a great game. Yes, I understand that the developers didn't follow through on a lot they initially promised, thus taking away from the experience we the players expected. But what matters to me in a development team is that despite all of the hate that this game had and the colossal flop of a launch, CD Projekt Red didn't give up. They continued to care for their game, fix their game, and add on to their game. They recognized the mistakes they had made and began to fix them. Did they add everything that they promised? No. Did they send an initial apology for the state of their game? Yes, and they provided a roadmap for those fixes. Cyberpunk, although flawed, is an amazing experience to behold. As of launch 2020, I would have given this game a 5 out of 10, due to the state it was launched in and the lack of promises the development team followed through on. But as of 2022, Cyberpunk has aged like a fine wine. Regardless of current bugs, and regardless of the lack of customizations, CD Projekt Red has shown that even when in a low spot, they will not give up, and have turned their game into something that can only be described as a must-play to dive into a world full of mystery and excitement. As of now, before CD Projekt Red announces any future DLC, I will be giving this game an 8 out of 10. Cyberpunk is truly a lost gem that has been refound, and is beginning to shine brighter than it ever has. The future for this game is bright, and I look forward to the day I can call this game a masterpiece. Now, I'd like to take a moment of your time to get your thoughts on Cyberpunk, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you have made it this far into the video, I want to thank you for your time. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like down below, and feel free to subscribe for any and all future content. As for now, take it easy, Samurai.